Hello, today we are talking with Dr. Rick Perkins, David Richard Perkins, who is an associate professor at UL Psych Department. Can you tell us a bit about your education, Dr. Perkins?
Sure. I got my earned my undergraduate degree from the University of Arizona, and then I was admitted into a PhD program in clinical psychology at the University of New Mexico. I originally worked with a psychoanalytic supervisor, Dr. Samuel Roll. I did my master's thesis with him, and then I switched perspectives a little bit, and I did my dissertation with Dr. Michael Dewar, who was a behavior analytic professor. So I am I am a product of varying intellectual lineages.
Very different perspectives on psychology. When did you become part of the faculty in the psychology department?
Um, I first, it's sort of in stages. I first came out here after I finished my internship in 1999, and I was an adjunct professor for a couple years. One of the faculty members, Dr. David Greenway, was able to introduce me to the department head, and I was able to get the opportunity to teach a couple courses that are related to clinical psychology. In 2001, a full-time position opened up for instructor. Initially, it was an emergency temporary replacement instructor, but it basically turned into a full-time instructor position on its own. In 2007, one of our clinical psychologists on faculty was retiring. And so I was encouraged to apply for that position, and I was fortunate enough to get a tenure track position at that point. And I've been fortunate enough to obtain tenure, since then. So that's where I'm at.
And I believe you're an associate professor now?
Yes, yes.
Okay. Can you tell us a little bit about the courses that you teach? I know there are a bunch.
Yeah, I teach both courses at the graduate level and at the undergraduate level. There are a number of courses that are not on my slate to teach this academic year that I have taught in the past, and that includes substance abuse. I've taught sections of that in the past. I have taught in the past sections of adjustment. I have also taught intro courses for majors. But the courses that I am teaching this year is a mixture of graduate and undergraduate courses. Actually, like over the fall and the spring, 3 graduate courses and 3 undergraduate courses. The undergraduate courses are this semester, I teach a course on professional issues, which is a course for psychology seniors that helps them to prepare for what comes next. So we have them do different assignments related to critical thinking, building a resume or vita, ethics, things like that. Very much of an assignment-based course. In the spring, I'm teaching undergraduate courses on learning. So then about some of the basic knowledge that we expect you to have about classical conditioning, operant conditioning, observational learning. And I am also teaching a course on at least what at this time we call abnormal psychology, the study of abnormal psychology, which is psychological disorders, right? The things that people experience in life. We're actually, as a department, we're going to likely request that we change the name of that in a couple catalogs, because abnormal psychology has it's sort of becoming outdated as a term. So
it does have some negative connotations that we'd like to move away from.
That's right. That's right. And we want to be with the times as far as not inadvertently even promoting stigma. The graduate courses that I teach a course called Psychological Concepts for the first year students in our master's program. That I tried to design it to be a forum for graduate students to develop their own thoughts about things and to sort of come to understand at least a little bit their own perspective so they can think about how it relates to their thesis.
Mhm.
I teach a course on advanced psychopathology, which we have both psychology and counseling students in that course. And it's about using the DSM as a platform or a vehicle for understanding and talking about a bunch of different types of psychological struggles and issues that people might face in practice.
Mhm.
And then in this spring, I'm teaching a course called Psychotherapy Concepts, which is examining both the research, some issues in research around psychotherapy, and also having discussions about the experience of
Mhm.
doing psychotherapy, and and looking at the kinds of things that happen in a room and our reactions to somebody who writes a book about their experiences providing psychotherapy.
Okay, that's really important. You talked a little bit about your background. Can you tell us about your research? Is there a framework that guides your research?
Um, there's so many different ways of conceptualizing framework. First, in terms of content, I work with two different lab groups that are focused on somewhat different content. So then one lab group we call the music lab, and I actually work on it with Dr. McIvers, who is interviewing me right now. So, and we have a great time where we facilitate student projects that are related to music, or sometimes just related to human experience, sort of inspired initially by music and then branching out into something else. We also just appreciate music. So sometimes we take time in that lab to just simply listen to music and sort of take it in.
Mhm.
Um, my other lab, and we have a great time with that, so it's a lot of fun. We have Tuesday afternoon meetings. Um, I have another group that I meet on Thursday afternoons that I call the Analysis of Human Experience Lab, or AHI. And this is, at this time, is a small group of students from various levels. Like, we have graduate, we have postgraduate, we have a doctoral program. Um, we've had a couple undergraduates attend. That this is a lab that is very influenced by a behavioral or contextual behavior science sort of perspective on things,
Mhm.
but looking through that lens at certain types of areas of human concern, different types of variables in their relationship to each other. So then, for example, a recently published paper was looking at how adverse childhood experiences may have an influence on self-concealment, behaviors related to self-concealment, and how other variables such as psychological flexibility might mediate certain types of experiences like that. So, I am not particularly dogmatic from a theoretical perspective, but um, my sort of core, it comes back to my roots as a graduate student, which is that I have a lot of interests of human concern and wanting to get to things in depth that is sort of reflected by the psychodynamic tradition. However, from a research training perspective, I never really resonated with how precise psychoanalytic formulations are, or the language around it. So I think it's like really cool, the stuff the psychoanalysts are looking at, and the kinds of things like defense mechanisms or conflict, or the way that you're learning history, or the way that your childhood is, the way they put it, right, affects your behavior. But the additional behavioral training that I received has given me another avenue by which to talk about these things as behavior within the context of the history of the organism. So in other words, we have certain experiences throughout life that oftentimes will have an influence over the way that we learn information, the way that we respond to things in our environment, and may actually be an effective way of understanding how sometimes we can engineer effective interventions, because it's all about environment behavior relations and manipulating the environment to get certain types of outcomes. But what it also translates into is that it makes me interested in a whole bunch of different stuff.
Indeed, it does.
And I love it. I love being a psychologist. I love having the opportunity to work here. Um,
You
so
mentioned a couple studies already, but are there other studies that you would like to tell us about that you've been working on?
um, uh, we're actually doing a follow-up on the concealment paper. So it's getting into a little bit of the weeds, but we recently published a concealment paper that from our lab that was based upon a proposed mediation model, statistical mediation model. And now we are approaching that same data set with an additional article that's looking at an alternative moderation-based model. For those of you who aren't completely familiar with those terms, they're basically statistical types of techniques that are looking at potential relationships between key variables in a larger framework. So
Right.
yeah, yeah.
So a mediation model would be one where you have to have the mediating variable in order to get the relationship between the key independent variable and the key outcome variable.
Right. So then, as an example, if you have observed that a particular cognitive behavioral treatment causes people to become less depressed on the average, the mediation model might say that it is necessary for the cognitive behavioral treatment to work, that you have changes in core belief systems or changes in your cognitions that allows the cognitive behavior treatment to work. Moderation analyses are where you have additional variables that may have an influence between the relationship between X and Y. So then if X causes Y, a moderating variable might change the relationship between X and Y. So then for example, that let's say that older individuals responded better to the cognitive behavioral treatment than people who are younger.
Right. So age then would be a moderator.
Right.
Yes.
Right. Another study that we're finishing collecting the data on, and as you know, Dr. McGivers, is an undergraduate student who is going to be doing his graduate thesis with Dr. McGivers, is finishing up a study where he looks at the effects of different types of music key and tempos on mathematics, anxiety, and performance. And he's in the process of collecting the last parts of the data, and depending on what we get, it's definitely good, could turn into more conference presentations, and who knows, maybe a publication
I
could
hope
happen.
it gets published. I think it's really good research.
Yeah, it's really awesome.
So how do students join your lab? What do they need to do? Let's start with the music lab.
Okay, well, basically we have like a pretty open sort of approach to the music lab. People who have had me in classes or know about me or hear about a presentation, they send me an email. They say that they're interested. I might have like a really brief meeting with them to kind of talk about their interest with them. And in almost every case, it turned into them visiting the lab and sitting in. Right now we're having them as Zoom meetings. We'll have them as Zoom meetings for a little while. We'll see. You know, the world's hard to predict these days. But we've had a number of students who have attended our lab meetings, and some of them stayed, and other ones were checking out other labs and found, no, I want to do this other experience over there. And we are totally happy with that because we're very student centric. And so
Indeed we are.
generally speaking, we get people who love music who end up
We do.
attending our lab meetings. For the other one, it's a little bit more of a finding out together if it's a fit for the AHE or AHI lab, because that lab is so much influenced by a particular perspective that I try to encourage people to ask questions about it. I still might have them attend a meeting, but we might have multiple discussions about, is this a perspective that fits into what you thought it was? Does it fit into your interests? And again, I am more than open to having conversations with people where we mutually decide, yeah, okay, it sounds like for you, this is kind of interesting, but not really what you were looking for.
Mhm.
You know, so
I think with the AHI lab, you're more likely to be taking a behavior analytic approach
yeah, yeah,
or applied behavior analytic approach,
or be willing to learn about it at the
at
very
least.
at the very least, yes.
Right.
Which is a cool approach, but certainly we're not bound by that in the music lab whatsoever.
I know you also have some other responsibilities in the department. I believe you're one of the advisors for Psychi. Is there
Yes.
anything else you want to tell us about things you do in the department?
Well, and by the way, I will be posting announcement probably on Sunday, inviting people to apply for Psychi. So look, you know, if anybody who sees this, you might see that message might already be posted. And so, you know, join Psychi. We love to honor our students, and I'm on a number of different committees. Uh, you know, in the department. Undergraduate assessment, admission, you know, into our master's program, um, the undergraduate research committee. So I'm involved in a lot of a lot of different types of activities that are involved with promoting student experience in the department, promoting good research experience. I've learned a lot more in the last year or two about all the different labs that are here in our department. I think that's like really, really cool, you know, knowing more about that. Um, uh, I am one of the uh, four professors who have a specific sort of therapy, counseling, clinical related sort of background, along with Dr. McDermott, Dr. Rosencraft, and Dr. Sandoz.
Mhm.
And so I oftentimes participate in discussions or different activities that are related to clinical research, clinical knowledge, clinical implementations. Um, and I'm trying to think of what else formally that I do. I mean, I'm basically, we do a lot, right? So I know I'm missing something here,
Well,
but
you also do excellent imitations of other faculty members.
well, that's
And
not
you're a very amusing professor. I think that a lot of students report that they enjoy your classes and that you're not only interesting, but you're sometimes funny.
I am sometimes funny, and sometimes when I'm not funny, it's still funny. Yeah.
Indeed.
Uh, but yeah, I do enjoy doing voices. Um, I try to. I'm very careful, but we're never 100% successful. But I'm very careful to not be aggressive or mean, you know, about the way that I do that kind of stuff. Humor can be healing, and humor can be a weapon. And so I try to be conscious of that and not let my sarcastic humor side come out. You know,
Indeed.
very pro student. I think people who've had me in a class would probably vouch for that. I bend over backwards to try to be receptive to feedback and to be in tune to the needs of the class and be willing to be flexible and adjust as we go.
Indeed.
And I love talking psychology, sometimes a little bit too much. So
I think that's something that we all suffer from.
yeah, yeah.
Thank you
It's a
for
great
speaking
book.
with us today, Dr. Perkins. I appreciate your candor and the interest with which you have addressed the questions.
Thank you so much. And hello to everybody out there. And if you don't know me, come by and say hi sometime.